They fired him for helping an elderly woman in need. The next morning, 7 SUVs rolled up, and every neighbor thought he was being arrested. But the truth behind those vehicles left the whole town speechless. Ronan Avery didn't plan on staying that late. The shop had closed 2 hours ago. The air in Augusta thick and heavy, the smell of oil clinging to his hands. He was halfway through locking up when he saw her, a small, silver-haired woman sitting alone by the curb near the parking lot. Her electric wheelchair was tilted to one side, wheels stiff, a plastic grocery bag hanging from the handle. She looked lost, not just in direction but in spirit. Ronan wiped his hands on a rag and called out, "Ma'am, you all right there?" She turned her head slowly. I think my chair's dead again. It just stopped on me. Can't move an inch." Her voice trembled, but she tried to smile. Ronan could have walked away. It wasn't his business. The shop had rules, strict ones. His boss, Wade Pritchard, didn't allow charity work on company property. But something about the way the woman's hands shook as she tried to move the joystick got to him. "Hold on," he said, tossing the keys onto the counter. "Let me take a look." He wheeled her back into the garage bay, the one with the old Chevy pickup still halfway through a brake job. The flicker of a single fluorescent light filled the room. Ronan crouched beside the wheelchair, inspecting the frame. "You don't have to do all that," she said softly. "It's probably just done for good. My son told me to get a new one, but I can't afford that right now." He smiled faintly. "We'll see about that." Her name, he learned, was Ethel Branson, 79 years old, a widow, used to be a school teacher. She'd lived in the same brick house for 40 years, about a mile from the shop. She talked with that gentle southern rhythm that made everything sound patient. Ronan popped the side panel open and saw the issue right away. One of the axle brackets had cracked clean through, and the power connector was fried. Most folks would have called it done. He didn't. "Looks like it's seen better days," he muttered. "But I think I've got something that might work." He went to his workbench, rummaging through boxes of spare parts, ones he'd bought himself for side jobs and old projects. When he returned, Ethel watched him with wide eyes. "You really think you can fix it?" she asked. "Ma'am, I fix engines that cost more than my house," he said, smiling. "I can handle a chair with a bad attitude." That got a laugh out of her, a warm, genuine sound that made the place feel less empty. For the next 40 minutes, Ronan worked steadily, hands moving with quiet confidence. Sparks popped once as he soldered a connection, the smell of burnt metal filling the air. Ethel sat silently watching, as if afraid to blink. When he finally switched the power back on, the chair hummed to life. The lights on the panel glowed green, she gasped, pressing her hand over her mouth. "Oh my Lord, you did it." Ronan stood, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Should be good for another few years, long as you don't run drag races with it." Ethel laughed again, tears glistening in her eyes. "You don't know what this means to me, son." "I didn't know what I was going to do." He shrugged. "Just glad I could help." She reached into her purse, pulling out a folded 20. "Please take this." "I can't let you do it for nothing." Ronan shook his head firmly. "No, ma'am." "You save that. You might need it for batteries or groceries." "I'm good." Her voice broke a little. "You sure?" "I'm sure." She stared at him, then said something that would stay with him long after that night. "Your mama must be proud. Folks don't make men like you anymore." He didn't know what to say to that. He just smiled and helped her into the seat, making sure she could maneuver it without trouble. The sound of the motor whirring softly as she backed out of the garage felt like a quiet victory. Before leaving, she looked back. "My son's coming to visit next week. I'll tell him about you. Maybe he can send more folks your way." Ronan nodded, not thinking much of it. "You take care of yourself now." She waved and disappeared down the dim street, the chair rolling steady and true under the orange glow of the streetlights. He didn't realize it then, but that small act, just helping someone who needed it, would set off a chain of events that would change his life, and everyone around him, forever. That night, as he turned off the lights and locked the shop door, he had no idea that someone else had already seen what happened, and they weren't going to stay silent. The next morning, the shop smelled like grease and coffee, the same as every Saturday. Ronan arrived early, as usual, with a biscuit in one hand and his thermos in the other. He was humming under his breath, still thinking about Ethel Branson and her face when that wheelchair came back to life. He hadn't told anyone about it. He didn't see the need. It was just the right thing to do. The clock read 7:42 when the front door slammed. Wade Pritchard's boots hit the floor like gunshots. Everyone in the garage stopped working. Wade was a big man, thick arms, red face, silver hair slicked back like an old country singer. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. "Ronan!" Wade barked, his voice echoing through the bay office. "Now," Ronan glanced at the others. A few mechanics pretended to be busy, eyes darting toward him and then away. He wiped his hands and walked toward the small office at the back. Wade was already standing by the desk, holding a printed sheet of paper. "Something wrong?" Ronan asked. Wade slapped the paper onto the desk. It was a still image from one of the security cameras, Ronan kneeling beside Ethel's wheelchair in the garage. "You mind explaining this?" Wade's tone was sharp, cold. Ronan blinked. Oh, yeah. The lady's wheelchair broke down out front last night. I just fixed it real quick." "Real quick," Wade repeated, his voice rising. "You used my shop, my tools, my electricity to fix some stranger's toy chair?" Ronan frowned. "That wasn't on company time. I stayed late, did it after hours." Wade stepped closer, his face inches away. "I don't care when you did it." "You don't touch a thing in here that ain't tied to a paying job. We're not a charity, Avery." Ronan took a slow breath. "She's an elderly woman, Wade. Her chair broke down in front of the shop. What was I supposed to do, push her home?" "That's not the point," Wade snapped. "You don't use my space for personal favors. You think this place runs on kindness. You want to fix people's junk for free? Do it in your driveway." The words hit harder than Ronan expected. "I didn't take a dime from you," he said quietly. "I use my own parts." "Don't matter," Wade growled. "You crossed the line." For a few seconds, the room went still. Only the faint buzz of a ceiling fan broke the silence. Then Wade reached into a drawer, pulled out an envelope, and tossed it on the desk. "Your last check." "We're done." Ronan stared at it, confused. "You're firing me for helping someone." Wade smirked. "For breaking the rules." "Don't make this about something it ain't." Ronan's jaw tightened. "You serious right now?" "I'm dead serious. You don't run this shop, I do." "You're out." There was nothing left to say. Ronan picked up the envelope, looked him square in the eye, and walked out. The shop floor went silent as he stepped through. Nobody said a word, but he could feel the weight of their eyes, pity, guilt, maybe fear. Outside, the morning sun hit hard. He stood for a second, looking at his hands, the same hands that fixed hundreds of cars, rebuilt engines, and gave people their rides back. Now they were empty. He climbed into his old F-150 and drove off without looking back. By noon, word had already spread through town. A few regulars at the diner whispered about it between bites of eggs. "Did you hear what Wade did?" one said. "Fired Ronan for fixing that woman's chair." The small-town grapevine worked faster than the internet. By evening, everyone in the neighborhood seemed to know. When Ronan pulled into his driveway, his neighbor, Elise Vaughn, waved from her porch. "Heard what happened, Ronan. You okay?" He forced a small smile. "Yeah, I'll figure something out." She frowned. "You did the right thing, honey. Don't you let that man make you think otherwise." Inside, Ronan's house felt unusually quiet. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his calloused hands. He'd worked for Wade 12 years. No write-ups, no problems. Now all gone in a heartbeat. But the more he thought about it, the less he regretted it. He'd done the right thing. He knew that. Still, that didn't stop the anger from boiling up. He thought of Ethel's face, the joy, the gratitude, and wondered if she'd ever know what that moment had cost him. He didn't sleep much that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that image. Wade's smirk, the camera photo, the envelope on the desk. He told himself tomorrow would be better. He'd start looking for new work, maybe in Macon or Savannah. There were always shops hiring good hands. But something inside him, a quiet instinct, told him this wasn't over yet. Because sometimes life doesn't just move on. Sometimes it circles back in ways you'd never expect. Her smile widened. "Morning, Ronan," she called cheerfully. "Told you my boy would find you." He blinked, still trying to make sense of it all. "Mrs. Branson, what's going on?" Graham gestured toward the house. May we come in? We'd rather not discuss things in the driveway. Ronan hesitated. 7 black SUVs and a lawyer on his lawn wasn't exactly normal, but something about their calmness told him it wasn't trouble. Yeah, sure, he said finally, holding the door open. Inside, the men remained near the entryway while Graham and Ethel sat at the kitchen table. Graham removed his sunglasses, folding them neatly beside a leather briefcase. Mr. Avery, he began, his voice steady. My mother told me what happened at that repair shop. I also obtained the footage from your employer's security cameras, the video that's been circulating online. Ronan's stomach tightened. That wasn't me putting it out there. I didn't even know there was a camera. Graham nodded. I know. I had it pulled legally. I'm an attorney, not a journalist. Ethel leaned forward. He saw what you did for me, Ronan, every second of it. Graham's eyes softened. You didn't hesitate to help her. You didn't know who she was, didn't ask for anything. That speaks volumes about your character. Ronan rubbed the back of his neck. I just did what anyone decent would have done. That's the thing, Graham said quietly. Not everyone would have. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a large envelope, sliding it across the table. Inside is a formal offer. I own Branson Vehicle Systems in Atlanta. We handle fleet servicing for corporate and municipal clients. We need someone who understands engines and integrity. My mother seems to think you fit both. Ronan blinked, staring at the envelope. Wait, you're offering me a job? Not just a job, Graham said. A leadership position, full salary, benefits, relocation assistance. We can talk specifics once you've had time to look it over. Ethel beamed. Told you he was a man of his word. Ronan laughed lightly, half in disbelief. I don't even know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Graham said, smiling. That's all I'm asking. Ronan leaned back in his chair, the morning light cutting across the room. His life had gone from losing a job to having 7 black SUVs in his driveway and a corporate lawyer offering him a position, all because he'd fixed a broken wheelchair. It didn't feel real. You know, he said slowly. When Wade fired me, I thought maybe helping folks was just bad business. Guess I was wrong. Graham's expression turned thoughtful. There's nothing wrong with doing what's right. Mr. Avery, some people just can't see the value in it until someone else does. For the first time in days, Ronan felt something shift inside him. Relief, maybe. Or just the weight of things starting to make sense. Ethel reached across the table and patted his hand. You've got a good heart, son. Don't let anyone ever make you feel bad for it. Ronan smiled, still stunned. Thank you, ma'am. Graham stood, buttoning his jacket. We'll give you time to consider. My office will follow up tomorrow. But whatever you decide, my mother and I wanted to thank you in person. Outside, as the SUVs pulled away one by one, the neighborhood began peeking out from behind curtains. By the time Ronan turned back toward the house, Elise Vaughn was standing on her porch again, hands on her hips. What on earth was that about? She yelled across the yard. Ronan just smiled. Long story, Elise. Might be the start of a new one. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning, because when life hands you a second chance, it rarely comes quietly. The rest of that day felt unreal to Ronan. Every few minutes he caught himself glancing out the window, half expecting those black SUVs to still be there. But the street was quiet again, too quiet. The envelope from Graham Branson sat unopened on the kitchen table. Ronan must have circled it 10 times, picking it up, putting it down, rubbing his thumb across the edge. He wanted to believe this was real, that someone actually wanted to reward him for something that got him fired. But it didn't make sense. Finally, around noon, he sat down, took a deep breath, and tore it open. Inside were printed documents on thick, cream-colored paper, a job offer, official letterhead, signatures. The first line made his hand still. Position, Senior Fleet Operations Supervisor, Branson Vehicle Systems. Salary, $102,000 annually. Location, Atlanta, Georgia. He read it again, slower this time, then again. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't some elaborate stunt. It was legitimate. Ronan let out a quiet laugh. This can't be real. Before he could process it, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Hello? Mr. Avery, came Graham Branson's voice, calm, assured. I wanted to make sure you received the paperwork. I did, Ronan said. I'm still trying to believe it's not a dream. Graham chuckled softly. Understandable. I wanted you to see for yourself before I explained why I'm doing this. All right, Ronan said. I'm listening. There was a pause on the line, then Graham spoke. My mother's wheelchair wasn't just old. It was the last thing my father built before he died. She refused to replace it because it reminded her of him. That night, when you fixed it, you gave her more than mobility. You gave her a piece of him back. Ronan sat in silence, the words sinking in. Graham continued. I watched that footage more times than I'd like to admit. The way you treated her, with patience, with respect, that's something you can't teach. You didn't know anyone was watching, and you didn't care about being seen. That's character. Ronan swallowed hard. I didn't think it was that big a deal. It was to her, Graham said quietly. And to me. My mother's been through a lot since my father passed. You reminded her that kindness still exists. That's not small, Mr. Avery, that's rare. For a few seconds, neither man spoke. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Then Graham added, If you're willing, I'd like you to come to Atlanta this week. Meet my team. See what we do. If it's not for you, I'll understand. But I have a feeling you'll fit right in. Ronan rubbed his forehead. This is a lot to take in. I know, Graham said. Take your time. My assistant will send you hotel details by email, all expenses covered. You helped my mother without hesitation. The least I can do is make sure you're treated the same way. Ronan couldn't find words for a moment. Finally, he said, I don't know what to say except thank you. I never thought helping someone would turn into all this. Graham replied gently, That's exactly why it did. When the call ended, Ronan sat back in his chair and stared at the documents again. His mind drifted to Wade Pritchard, probably still at that same office desk, red-faced, barking at whoever looked his way. The thought brought a small smile. He didn't plan revenge, didn't wish harm, but a part of him wondered how Wade would react if he saw the new offer letter sitting right beside that final paycheck. Later that afternoon, Ronan decided to visit Ethel again. He owed her that much. When he pulled into her driveway, she was in her garden, pruning hydrangeas with gentle hands. She looked up and smiled. I was wondering when you'd stop by. I take it you heard from Graham? Ronan held up the envelope. You could say that, Ethel chuckled. He's quick when he wants something done. That's his daddy in him. I just wanted to thank you, Ronan said. None of this would have happened if you hadn't spoken up. She waved a hand. Oh, hush. You earned it yourself. I just told the truth. He sat on the porch rail while she worked. You raised a good man. Her eyes softened. I tried to. He's a lot like you. Actually, does what's right even when it's not popular. They talked a while longer about small things. Weather, cars, her late husband's workshop. But beneath the calm conversation was something deeper. A mutual understanding that one moment of kindness had rewritten both their lives. As Ronan drove home, the weight of the past few days began to lift. Maybe life did balance itself, just not always on your timeline. He parked the truck, stepped out, and looked down the quiet street. The same street that, just 24 hours ago, had been filled with black SUVs. He couldn't help but smile. But as evening fell and the news vans began gathering outside Pritchard Auto, Ronan realized his story wasn't done making waves. And Wade Pritchard was about to learn that some wrongs come back to haunt you fast. By Tuesday morning, the story had gone from local gossip to national coverage. Major outlets were replaying the same 45-second clip. Ronan kneeling beside Ethel's wheelchair under the fluorescent lights of Pritchard Auto, his hands steady, his voice calm. It was strange watching himself on television. He wasn't used to attention, let alone admiration. The reporter's voice narrated, What began as a simple act of kindness in Augusta, Georgia, has sparked a national conversation about compassion and decency in the workplace. Ronan turned off the TV. He wasn't built for this kind of spotlight, but the world had other plans. That afternoon, Graham Branson called again. Mr. Avery, I know it's been a whirlwind, he said, but I'd like you to come to Atlanta tomorrow. Bring whatever you need for an overnight stay. My team's eager to meet you. Ronan agreed, though part of him still doubted any of it was real. Maybe it would all vanish if he blinked too hard. The next morning he ironed a clean shirt, one of the few without grease stains, and hit the road before sunrise. The highway stretched out like a silver ribbon through the pine trees, the sky turning pink as he crossed into the city. When he reached the Branson Vehicle Systems headquarters, the contrast hit him hard: sleek glass buildings, security gates, manicured lawns. A world away from the dusty concrete floors of Wade's shop. Inside, a receptionist greeted him warmly and handed him a visitor badge. Moments later, Graham appeared, suit crisp, smile relaxed. "Mr. Avery, glad you made it. How was the drive?" "Peaceful," Ronan said, shaking his hand. "I'm still not sure I belong in a place like this." Graham laughed. "You'd be surprised. Most of the best people who work here came from small garages just like yours." He led Ronan through the building, rows of engineers, technicians, and staff moving with quiet focus. The facility buzzed with energy, but it wasn't chaotic. It was purposeful. They stopped in a conference room with tall windows overlooking the company's vehicle testing lot. On the table sat a binder and a cup of fresh coffee. "I'll get right to it," Graham said, sitting across from him. "You've already seen the offer, but I want you to understand the role. You'd oversee operations for our fleet maintenance program, managing repairs, logistics, and training. You'd have a full crew under you and access to the best equipment in the state." Ronan looked down at his calloused hands, still marked with traces of grease that soap never seemed to remove. "Sounds like a lot of responsibility," Graham smiled. "That's because it is, and I trust you with it." Ronan studied him for a moment. "Why me, though? There's 100 people more qualified." "Maybe," Graham said. "But I've learned something in this business. Skill can be taught. Character can't. You've already proven which one you've got more of." Ronan took a sip of coffee to hide the emotion tightening his throat. "I appreciate that, sir." "Don't call me sir," Graham said with a grin. "Makes me sound like my father." They both laughed softly, the tension breaking. After the meeting, Graham introduced Ronan to a few members of the team, mechanics, supervisors, office staff. Each greeted him with genuine curiosity, some even recognizing him from the news. One technician, Drew Coleman, shook his hand and said, "Man, you're the reason I got back into this field. Saw that clip online, reminded me why I started fixing cars in the first place." Ronan chuckled. "Didn't expect to inspire anybody. I just fixed a wheelchair. That's the point," Drew said. "You did it because it mattered." By the end of the day, Graham invited him to dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown. Over steak and sweet tea, the conversation drifted from business to family, to faith, to the strange ways life tests people. "You know," Graham said, "when I was a kid, my dad used to say the truest measure of a man is what he does when nobody's watching." "You reminded me of that," Ronan nodded. "My mom used to say something like that too. You don't help for applause, you help because it's right." "Guess both our folks were onto something," Graham smiled. "Seems so." Before they parted, Graham handed him a hotel key card. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll finalize everything, if you're ready." As Ronan walked out into the warm evening air, the city lights flickered against the skyline. For the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt since he was a young man fixing his first car: excitement. He knew nothing about corporate life, contracts, or six-figure salaries, but what he did know was this: for once, doing right had led him somewhere worth going. Still, as he settled into his hotel room and turned off the lamp, his mind drifted back to Augusta, to Wade Pritchard pacing his office, reporters waiting outside, and a community finally seeing who he really was. But tomorrow would bring its own reckoning, one that would leave Wade wishing he'd never thrown that paycheck on the floor. Back in Augusta, the heat was brutal, but not half as scorching as the attention circling Wade Pritchard's garage. By midweek, local news vans lined the street in front of Pritchard Auto, cameras pointed toward the faded sign and dusty glass doors. Mechanics stood in clusters outside, whispering while pretending to work. The story had exploded, not just about Ronan Avery helping an elderly woman, but about Wade himself. The man who fired him for it. Wade slammed the blinds shut in his office, muttering curses under his breath. "These vultures don't know the whole story," he barked to no one in particular. His assistant, Trudy Lang, hovered by the door, holding a ringing phone. "It's Channel 9 again," she said quietly. "They want to comment." "Tell them I got nothing to say," Wade snapped. Trudy hesitated. "They said they've already talked to Mr. Avery and to the woman, Mrs. Branson." That stopped him cold. "They what?" Trudy nodded, lowering her voice. "Apparently her son's some big-shot lawyer. He told them you're the kind of man who punishes good deeds." Wade's face turned crimson. "That's a lie. That's slander." "Sir," she said gently, "it's on camera." Wade dropped into his chair, rubbing his temples. The phone kept ringing. Reporters, customers, even old friends wanting answers. A few loyal clients had already canceled upcoming appointments. The online reviews were brutal. Words like heartless and disgrace filled the comment sections. Out in the shop, the younger mechanics exchanged nervous looks. Neil Porter glanced at another co-worker, whispering, "You think he'll shut down?" "'Cause this looks bad, man," the other shrugged. "I just know I don't want to be on his bad side today." Around noon, a black sedan pulled up outside. Two men in suits stepped out, local reporters with microphones in hand, cameras following close behind. "Mr. Pritchard," one called, "do you have any comment on the firing of Ronan Avery?" Wade stormed out of his office, chest puffed, eyes narrow. "I don't owe anyone a statement." "This is private business." The reporter didn't budge. "Sir, the community is calling for you to apologize. Some even say your actions were racially motivated. Do you have a response to that?" The air went still. Mechanics froze mid-motion. Wade's jaw tightened. "You people twist everything. That man broke company policy. It had nothing to do with race or any of that nonsense." "So you stand by your decision?" The reporter pressed. "I stand by running my business how I see fit." The cameras caught every word, every flash of anger. Within hours, the clip was online. Wade Pritchard, red-faced and shouting, looking exactly like the villain he was trying not to be. Meanwhile, 200 miles away, Ronan was sitting in a sleek conference room at Branson Vehicle Systems, signing his new contract. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. Graham Branson stood beside him, offering a firm handshake. "Welcome to the team, Mr. Avery." Ronan smiled modestly. "Appreciate it, sir. I won't let you down." "You already haven't," Graham replied. "Now let's get you a tour of your department." Ronan followed him through the facility, meeting his crew, shaking hands, exchanging laughs. Everyone seemed genuinely glad to have him there, not because of a viral video, but because of the person behind it. That evening, after his first official day, Ronan sat in his hotel room watching the news again. The headline across the screen read, "Mechanic fired for kindness hired by Atlanta firm. Former boss faces backlash." The footage of Wade's outburst rolled next. Reporters narrated over it, mentioning community protests and boycotts forming around Pritchard Auto. One customer on camera said, "You don't fire a man for helping an old lady. That tells you everything about his character." Ronan felt no satisfaction in it, only clarity. Justice didn't always need revenge. Sometimes it worked quietly through truth and timing. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Elise back home. "Your old boss just shut down the shop for the day. Folks picketing outside. You did good, Ronan. Proud of you." He smiled softly. Then another message came, this one from an unknown number. "You changed more than one life this week. Don't forget that." "G-boy." Ronan set the phone down and leaned back in his chair. Maybe Graham was right. Good character couldn't be bought, but it sure could open doors. The next day, a new video surfaced online. It showed Ethel Branson being interviewed in her garden, sunlight on her face. "That young man didn't help me for money or praise," she said. "He helped me because it was right. The world needs more people like him and fewer people trying to punish them." Her words spread faster than any headline. Comment sections filled with gratitude, support, and admiration. People began sharing their own stories of quiet kindness. Somewhere in Augusta, Wade Pritchard watched that interview in silence. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from his landlord reminding him his lease was under review. For the first time in a long while, Wade sat still, realizing that decency wasn't weakness, it was power, and he'd underestimated it. But for Ronan Avery, this was just the beginning of rebuilding, not revenge, not fame, but a new life built on the same principle that started it all, doing right. even when no one's watching. By the following week, Ronan Avery's name had become more than a headline. It had become a symbol, one tied to decency, humility, and quiet courage. But for him, fame meant nothing. He just wanted to work again, to build something with his hands and earn his peace. Back at Branson Vehicle Systems, the days passed quickly. The garage floor was spotless, the tools organized in rows, the smell of metal and oil strangely comforting. It wasn't home, but it was close, and the people there treated him like he'd always been part of the family. One morning, as Ronan was going over maintenance schedules with a technician, Graham walked in. "You're adjusting fast," he said, grinning. "Most people take weeks to find their footing." Ronan smiled. "When you've been fixing things your whole life, you learn to adapt." Graham handed him a small box. "This is for you. Consider it your welcome gift." Ronan opened it to find a brand new set of custom tools engraved with his initials, R.A. He blinked, caught off guard. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Graham said. "You reminded me why this company exists. To fix what's broken, not just machines." Ronan turned the wrench in his hands, admiring the weight of it. "Thank you, really." Graham clapped him on the shoulder. "There's something else, too. My mother's been asking about you. She wants to come see the place, maybe thank the team for what they did for her." Ronan chuckled. "She doesn't need to thank anyone. She already did more than enough. Try telling her that," Graham said, laughing. "She's stubborn, runs in the family." 2 days later, Ethel Branson arrived at the facility. She wore a light blue cardigan, her silver hair pinned neatly, eyes bright with pride. The entire team stopped what they were doing when she rolled in. "Well, I'll be," she said with a grin. "This place looks cleaner than my kitchen floor." The staff laughed, and Ronan came over, wiping his hands on a rag. "Mrs. Branson, what are you doing here?" "I came to see where my favorite mechanic ended up," she said, "and to make sure they're treating you right." Ronan smiled. "They're doing just fine, ma'am." She looked around the room, eyes glistening a little. "You know, when you fixed that chair of mine, I thought it was just a lucky night, a stranger lending a hand. But I realize now it was bigger than that. You started something, Mr. Avery." He shook his head modestly. "I didn't start anything, just fixed what was broken." She pointed a finger at him. "That's where you're wrong. You reminded people what being human looks like. I've had letters from folks I don't even know, saying they saw that video and decided to do something kind for someone else." "That's on you, son." Ronan didn't know what to say. The room fell quiet for a moment, the weight of her words hanging there. Graham broke the silence. "She's right, you know. What happened with you and my mother reminded people that decency still matters. We could all use a bit more of it." Ethel smiled warmly. "And to think it all started with a busted wheelchair and a man who refused to walk away." That afternoon, they gave Ethel a tour of the facility. She watched the engineers run diagnostics, the mechanics check engines, and smiled every time Ronan explained something in detail. You could tell she saw him like family now. Before she left, she turned to Graham and said, "You know, I think you should make him the face of your community outreach program. He's already got the heart for it." Graham looked at Ronan. "She might be onto something." Ronan laughed. "Now hold on, I just started here." "Exactly," Graham said. "And you've already done more than most people do in a year." They all shared a quiet moment of understanding, one that didn't need big words or speeches. That night, after everyone left, Ronan stayed behind. The facility lights dimmed one by one as he cleaned his workbench. He paused for a moment, staring at the engraved tools. For the first time in a long while, he felt proud, not just for surviving what happened, but for the man he'd managed to stay through it all. His phone buzzed with a text from Elise back in Augusta. They put up a sign at the old shop. "Says closed until further notice. Folks still talking about you." "You did good, Ronan." He smiled and typed back. "Tell them I just did what anyone should have done." She replied, "Maybe, but most wouldn't have." Ronan set his phone down, looked around the quiet workshop, and thought about all that had changed in just a week, from humiliation to hope, from loss to purpose. But deep down, he knew this wasn't the end of his story. It was the start of something much bigger, something that would outlive any viral clip or headline. It had been nearly a month since that Friday night, when Ronan Avery had stayed late to fix a stranger's wheelchair. A small act that, at the time, felt like nothing more than decency. A gesture he'd repeat for anyone who needed help. But standing in front of a group of young apprentices at Branson Vehicle Systems now, he realized how much that moment had changed. Not only his life, but also the lives of others. Graham had convinced him to speak to the company's new trainees, most of them fresh out of trade school. Ronan wasn't one for speeches, but he agreed. He stood near the open garage bay, the smell of motor oil and metal in the air, hands resting on a toolbox engraved with his initials. He cleared his throat. "I ain't much for talking," he began, his tone steady. "But I'll tell you all something I learned the hard way. Doing what's right don't always pay right away. Sometimes it'll cost you first." The group listened quietly. He continued, "I lost a job because I helped somebody who couldn't help themselves. My boss said I broke the rules. Maybe I did. But I'd do it again without thinking twice because the rules ain't what define your worth. Your actions do." A young apprentice raised his hand. "Sir, were you scared when you got fired?" Ronan smiled faintly. "Yeah, scared and angry. You put years into a job, do everything right, and still get thrown out like you don't matter. It messes with you. But fear's just noise, son. What matters is what you do after it stops shouting." Graham stood at the back, arms crossed, a proud grin on his face. Ronan went on, "See, life's got a way of testing your patience before it rewards your purpose. That night, when I saw that woman struggling with her wheelchair, I didn't see a stranger. I saw my mama. I saw every person who worked hard their whole life just hoping for a little kindness when they need it. So I helped, and that one choice, that $5 fix, it changed everything." Another apprentice asked, "Would you ever go back to that old shop if they asked you?" Ronan chuckled. "Not a chance. But I don't hate the man who fired me. Truth is, I thank him now. He taught me something. Some people are so focused on what's profitable, they forget what's valuable." The room stayed silent for a moment, everyone absorbing his words. Ethel Branson happened to be there too, sitting off to the side in her wheelchair, smiling proudly. She raised her hand playfully. "Mind if I say something, Mr. Avery?" Ronan grinned. "You go right ahead, ma'am." Ethel turned to the apprentices. "This man here didn't just fix my chair. He fixed my faith in people. Don't ever think your job is just nuts and bolts. Sometimes you're holding someone's whole world together, and you don't even realize it." Applause filled the room. It wasn't thunderous, but it was real, the kind that comes from genuine respect. After the session ended, Ethel and Ronan sat outside under the shade of a pecan tree. The city traffic hummed faintly in the distance. She sipped her iced tea. "You did good in there," she said softly. "Didn't think I'd live long enough to see you giving speeches." He laughed. "Neither did I. I just tried not to trip over my words." Ethel smiled, her eyes twinkling. "You know, when my husband passed, I used to pray I'd meet someone who reminded me of him. Honest, humble, kind. Then you showed up in that greasy uniform, fixing what everyone else said couldn't be fixed." Ronan looked at her kindly. "Guess we both got lucky that night." She reached out, touching his hand. "No, son. Luck didn't have anything to do with it. That was grace." He didn't argue. He just sat with that thought, letting it sink in. Later that evening, after dropping Ethel back at her house, Ronan took a drive through downtown Augusta. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in orange and purple streaks. He passed the old Pritchard Auto building, now empty, windows boarded up, the sign faded. For a moment he parked across the street and watched. He didn't feel anger or bitterness anymore, just closure. He whispered to himself, "Some things break so better things can get built." The next day, Ronan returned to work more grounded than ever. He wasn't chasing recognition or trying to prove a point. He just wanted to keep doing what he'd always done, fixing what was broken, one thing at a time. When Graham stopped by his workstation that afternoon, he said, "You know, Ronan, I've been thinking, we should start something. Maybe a community repair initiative. Free work for folks who can't afford it. We'll call it the Avery Program." Ronan blinked. "You serious?" Graham nodded. "Completely." "Let's make kindness part of the business model." Ronan smiled. "If we're doing that, then we're going to need a lot more tools." They both laughed as the camera of life seemed to zoom out on that moment. The man, the garage, the lesson. The story of Ronan Avery settled into something timeless. Not a viral video, not a headline, a reminder. Because sometimes one act of kindness can do more than fix a broken wheel. It can steer the whole world back toward what matters. If you're watching this, remember, integrity still counts, kindness still matters. And if you ever wonder whether doing the right thing is worth it, just ask yourself this: how could it not be?